They didn't know what they were doing. They let me in because I said I did Traveler, you know. Well, they have, I dropped my membership after a couple of years because they really not responsive or didn't care about games, and that's okay. So I renewed it a couple of years ago when I actually wrote a novel, and it was real qualification in their mind. They have since opened it up to game designers for games, game credit, and they've opened it up to independent writers. And this
self-published or just
self-published, you have to sell so many,
okay?
you know. But now they're in a snit because the independent writers got together and created a slate, and they think that's unfair for the Nebula Awards to have a slate. You know, it's not like Tor and Ballantine didn't have, I mean, always had slates for their stables of people.
Beloy have a slate. Oh my God.
Oh my God, that's so against the idea. Of course, the whole idea of the Science Fiction Writers of America is the International Association of Published Science Fiction Writers. Have we started yet?
Oh, I think we have.
Oh, we did. We started 5 years ago. Okay, so the first introductory remarks about the short story don't count because that was before 5 o'clock, but everything else counts. Thank you all for coming. You'll find that I like to do these seminars. I call them this is Traveler 201, this is Advanced Traveler. It's the same as Easy Traveler.
Was there a prerequisite?
Yes, there was. There was one yesterday, and most of you were there. So,
Do I have to leave?
what?
Do I have to leave? I wasn't here.
Oh no, you know, you must. I bet you fit the prerequisites otherwise. You know, you've advanced placed in.
Okay. Test it out.
I was telling the story that my grandson, I played Traveler with him. I have a game I want to call Traveler 8 for 8-year-olds. You know, has no skills and it has no guns. And so, and it's all, you have your characteristics and you just roll your characteristic to see if you succeeded in what you wanted to do. But they have to articulate what they want to do and how it refers to strength or dexterity or endurance or intelligence or whatever. And you can't use one again until you've used 3 others. So you can't just use intelligence, intelligence, intelligence. You have to use other things along the way.
Can they still die during therapy?
No, not for kids. And
Years old, man.
and so they need to negotiate with the, you know, it's a lot of, there's no guns, it's all out of negotiation with and convincing the other side to do things. You know, and we kind of hold out the guns as something, when you're old enough to know, to be responsible, you can do that, but you have to play through this stuff first.
Well, I suppose you could find. So when they're 12, they get the fusion gun.
Yeah, boom!
Do you have those rules like written down?
No, no.
Just told them to.
Yeah, I know. I was writing them down.
All you do is, well, it's
So then-
your ability below, or if you're going to do a throw, it's +8 for standard, +6 for easy,
Yeah.
+10 for difficult, and
Your
just
modifier.
Yeah.
or your if you do modifiers, either way, and
Kids get a bump to their social.
yeah, you guys get a bonus.
So I was playing with my grandson, and you know, I made the rules up in my mind in order to play with him and my granddaughter, and then one of the things for a Traveler 8 would be a box set of things with exercises and things to color or things to cut out or put together, because I can't play with him 12 hours a day, which is, oh, grandfather, let's play this, you know. He's 22 now, you know. He doesn't do this anymore. But there's a point where they just want you forever, and what you want to do is give them this stuff and send them away, and they come back having done the project, and then you manipulate them through this thing. And of course, you can do it with half your mind turned off because you know how to play. And they just love you. And one of the other elements I have is you have to have a theme to every story you're doing. You should know what the theme is. You don't tell him. But it's about honesty or, you know, courtesy or cleanliness. You know, the cleanliness one is, you know, if you should be sure to, I make sure I clean that. You know, safety. All these things that you want to lecture your kids on, they want to hear it at 8 years old, if you just aren't preachy and they would love to play through a safety-oriented scenario or a cleanliness-oriented scenario and achieve at cleanliness and be rewarded for it, and it will stick with them for the rest of their lives.
I'm just having an image of a military safety briefing with these rules, and it's like.
Yeah, I know.
I'm thinking about Grandpa Mark's ABCs. A is for 10.
And what? And these guys, what? How does that work?
And then when the kid goes to school, you get a letter from the teacher that there's a conference apparently.
Yeah, he
They're
doesn't.
failing at English and math.
Oh,
They're
so
incredibly advanced players.
Matt, so I sent him off to generate his character. He came back with Coots, who is a Vargar. In this, I gave him a picture of a Vargar. He colored in with a bright mauve jacket and all that sort of stuff. He came back, and he had 1 billion credits. Now I don't know how he got that, but that's what he got. And it said that it was that many zeros across the top. And so then he's adventuring, going somewhere. He stopped at this, and everything's space. The space tug, the space station, the space taxi, the space elevator, all that. He stopped at the space restaurant and had lunch. And it was 22 credits. Subtraction, 22 from 1 billion. And then he had, and he laboriously carried all the nines down. He knew how to subtract. And, and for an 8-year-old to do that is an accomplishment. And he knew what to do. And you get back to, I remember when I was in high school, and I was dating this girl, and I realized her sister, who was like 11, was big into 17 magazine. I thought you had to be 17 to read 17 magazine. And you don't. It's not written for a 17-year-olds. It's written for 11 and 12 and 13-year-olds. Who want to be 17. And it's a great...
None of it's real either.
What?
None of it's real either.
No, but it is telling you the roles you need to play. And, and all that. And Boy's Life misleads us and tells us that we will be successes if we learn how to go camping and build a campfire,
Does it exist anymore?
What?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it does.
I haven't read it since I
It's
was
way more
like 12,
useful
so.
than 17.
Well, in a way, but what are they going to do with the Girl Scouts now? Okay, you're all in the Scouts now, and you're going to get Boy's Life.
Well, honestly, Girl Scouts never taught me how to make a fire, but Boys Life did, so.
Yeah, but they let girls in Boy Scouts now.
Yeah, which honestly, I'd make the switch.
They'll change it to Scout's Life.
And
Yeah,
teach
Scout's Life.
And teach both,
Yeah.
But
But you see, role-playing teaches kids how to budget money, how to have a pot of money and go do something.
you could
How?
have taught them double entry bookkeeping with that billion credits.
Oh, I know.
Kid walks out an accountant, there you go.
I mean,
mean,
I
they're
talked
all
with you about this on Thursday, I tried to,
admin level too?
I was like 12, trying to untangle your rule system.
Yeah.
I didn't know the math, and like today, like the big game shop in my town, which I think is like the 3rd largest game shop in America, just size, quantity, whatever metric you want to do, it's just ginormous. They have a summer camp for kids learning to play D&D now. I mean, we didn't have that. I mean, there
No,
were
we
summer
didn't.
camps later on, but you have to actually go to a camp to go to.
And but they talk about somebody at Random House sent their kids out to TSR and learn D&D at Gary's feet,
Yeah.
and they did, and that helped cement everything because those kids wanted to learn D&D. They learned it from him. TSR and Random House worked together, and they published all these books, So, but we'll entertain questions all along the way, but I just kind of ramble and talk about things that I think are fun, and then you tell me if they aren't fun, and we'll go on to something else. We're going to the Traveler. We currently have Traveler 5, the big book. I call that the Junior Woodchuck Manual of Traveler. We're going to reprint it as 3 256-page pieces, just like the original 3-book set, in a slipcase. That'll be fun.
So for those of us that are illiterate, are you going to do a light version?
And then we are going to do a player's manual,
With lots of pictures.
6x9, perfect bound softcover that everybody at the table ought to have to play with. you know, several years ago, almost 20 years ago now, Hunter Gordon with Quicklink did the D20 of Traveler, but he also reprinted the 3 Little Black Books in one book. You know, and he sent me a carton of them, and I just kind of sold them over time. I'm out of them now. Time to go on, move on, and produce something. That Traveler CD-ROM, the classic Traveler CD-ROM, is this bargain of everything that was ever done by GDW for classic Traveler. And you've got all that stuff. But I'm going to try and compile or decompress all that stuff into what a player at the table ought to have in order to play, and what he should think about, and what he should be able to look up and use. Yeah, 6x9, 256 pages is a nice size.
Have you considered doing a blueprint set?
I have a blueprint set.
No, but on a new one?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
In fact, I'm trying to do that one. What I've done is I've taken Judges Guild's deck plans.
Okay.
So it's a scout, a free trader, subsidized merchant, a cruiser, and they're all these unstreamlined things, these gangly, you know, just clusters of things, of containers put together. And I'd like to do that. That'd be fun. And it's got a yacht, but it's all these unstreamlined things where you have to stay in orbit and send your shuttle down to the
I was
surface with.
thinking just a white paper with the blue line.
Oh, nah, it's
Like
got black and
real
white,
draft.
because the blue doesn't copy well, and people want a copy or
Oh, yeah, I
whatever,
suppose.
you know, so they want to take that out.
Oh, what about that book that's the modular stuff, the deck plan, the guy that just.
Geomorphs,
Geomorphs, those are amazing.
yeah, Robert Pearson. So it's another thing to look up. I twisted his arm and made him wiggle with them a little bit to put it together. I don't have the files yet, but so we can print it through drive-through on print on demand,
Oh, nice.
and that'll be nice. Because
Like you could construct it and send it to them, or you just have to buy a preset piece on drive.
you buy the book.
Oh, buy the book.
You know, there's 180 pages of geomorphs,
Okay.
and it's everything you could possibly want. And
Yeah,
you know,
I
if
saw the it was posted somewhere.
yeah, well, there's a link on it. You know,
Yeah,
he's an architect. He does this in his spare time,
It's cool.
and so he's been busy. But here we are in March, and I think he's almost done. And then that's something that, you know, if there's enough demand, I'll print one and put it out. But
Nice.
you can print it on demand from him or through drive-through.
Lulu would be another option.
What?
Lulu would be another option.
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
all kinds
Yeah,
of-
they do good work. I mean, yeah,
And we'll probably do that. I mean, we'll make options available. I saw something down in the dealer room, and, you know, I'm inspired. They have decks of cards, a deck of 50 weapons for D&D, or 50 monsters or whatever. And you can print cards at drive-through.
You can do it with drive-through. There's also just game card. You can do various, you know, up to tarot and all different
Right,
types.
right, yeah.
Like I was part of when Fantasy Flight was doing Android Netrunner. There was a whole community of people doing alt arts of cards, you know, for prizes and whatnot.
Right.
And they would just go out to these card printing places and they would print up a pack.
Right.
Or you could you could just go up there and buy a set yourself and, you know,
Right.
it'd be shipped to you. There's all kinds
So
of.
there are lots, and so I'm looking at doing decks of cards, a deck of homeworlds, you know, a deck of weapons, you know, a deck of ships. Yeah, I could kickstart it. That's.
Because there'd be a market.
Now, you know about the Journal of Travelers Aid Society Kickstarter that's going on now?
No, I didn't.
Look up Kickstarter, Traveler RPG ought to get you there. But basically, Mongoose has taken the run of Journal from GDW and massaged it to make it up to date, work with Mongoose. And he's doing very well with that, so that's fun. There's Robert Eaglestone's X-Boat fanzine. There's a fanzine project from Kickstarter, and so he's doing a
Is that export?
X-Boat. And you know, it's a great experiment because he's not making canon so much as just he's going to make this fanzine and talk about stuff that he likes to do, and the other groups. And I have a what I call an inner circle of about 17 people. Not all of them participate all the time, but when I want to talk about something I'm doing, there are people within that I will touch and talk to and say, what do you think about this? And some give me feedback, some don't. I'd say, do you know about travelermap.com?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, all need to know about that? You know about travelerworlds.com?
Because you told me yesterday.
Yeah, I told you yesterday. There's a link when you look at a world in Traveler Map that will take you to a place that will make a geodesic map of that world. Complete with terrain in color or black and white. It has seeds, reproducible seeds for randomization, so it will make any number of random versions. They're not especially editable, but you can, okay, we've gotten to this world. Hit the button, and you have a page that is that world with the geodesic. And you click on a hex, and it'll blow that hex up to bigger scale.
I will say I'm a little just jealous of the sector map stuff that the people have been doing for Stars Without Number.
Oh, yeah?
Have you seen this?
No, I haven't.
So, Stars Without Number is D&D with your skill system.
Okay. Yeah, okay, good. Yeah.
I'm just letting you know, it's a melange of classic.
Now, let me just write down who I'm going to sue next. Right after Joss Whedon.
Hey, come on, he brought everyone back.
Yeah.
But it's a loving homage, and but it's experience points and levels, so
Yeah.
it's different from what you were doing with Traveler. But he's really all about Sandbox. And so there's a ton of tools in his stuff that I want to just completely rejigger for Traveler because it would be perfect. Like his quick and dirty thing is you generate a star, essentially that's populated, and then you do 2 world tags that give you potentially conflicting things, but you have to then reconcile it. You don't start with a world entry. You
Yeah.
just get this thing with, these 2 crazy things or these 2 things that work together, and that's kind of like the adventure idea around that world. And so someone's created a site where you go and it just literally generates an entire subsector, your size subsector,
Yeah.
because they're using the Traveler
Right.
as a model. And the worlds are all seeded according to, they get a little bit different from Traveler, and you can drill down and you can find, there might be more than one planet there. There can be a refueling station.
I'm going to go look at that and steal some stuff.
Oh, you
because-
should.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Because the guy who does Traveler Map, is really responsive, and I say, I'd like to see you do this, and he says, okay. And so,
Yeah.
we'll have to see what I can steal. That's how good game designers work,
Oh,
is
yeah.
steal.
I'm really scheming for ways to steal his faction system
Mm-hmm.
that is essentially a GM minigame between sessions. You have your factions, and they're doing something, whether the player's interacting with it or not, they're doing something
Yeah.
to each other or the worlds. And then what happens when you do that round by yourself generates news chyrons for what's going on in the world. And the great thing about that is you can be surprised as the game master about what's going on.
That's the thing that I just love about Traveler, and that's what I'm trying to get people to do. I get so many people who come to me and say, this doesn't make any sense,
Right.
and no, you can make it make sense. You
Reconcile.
just have to reconcile it. You have to figure it out. There's plenty of stuff. It makes no sense to me that we have a nice community at home, but they're all Republicans. How does that work?
Right, and with this, it's like you have like your favorites, and like if your favorites get their asses kicked in the faction round,
Yep.
you're suddenly going, oh, I didn't expect that. Why did that happen? Why did the Space Marines who have no starship support take out this guy's naval units that showed up on planet
Right.
side?
How did that happen?
How did that happen?
Yeah.
Well, it's an Imperial.
The
Marines
hero.
needed some starships, and they saw those ships over there.
Those are ours now, boys.
Now we have starship support. That's
But that's the kind of stuff that's exciting me about your game again, at least classic travel for me, because I don't have to look at the lore of, 20 years of the Imperium, which is, it's great if I want to do a research project, but if I want to just sit down at a table and play, I just want to put a world together, some basic stuff going on, and go.
And when I started this,
Right.
I was trying to conceptualize what I should do, and one of them was, okay, so we know Fated Sons.
Yeah.
Yeah, this decrepit, arcane, corrupt, religious dictatorship of the stars.
Mhm.
How do you get into that? You have to learn all the lore, you have to learn all that stuff, and then you take part in that. So if you want that, that's fine. But most people want their own thing, and Traveler is meant to take everybody under the umbrella of Traveler. So you can have a democracy, you can have a dictatorship or a monarchy or a bureaucracy, you can have all those things. I use as my models America or the world. That there are always these places out there that are different than where we live that we can encounter and have to interact with. And then when you're tired of that, you get on your ship and you go to the next place, and it's someplace different. And they all accept living under the mantle of the Imperium. The Imperium is very careful not to make them all toe the line. In fact, the only thing they have to do is accept the Imperial calendar. That's their sign of fealty. And they still use their own local calendar, but they do all their accounting in the Imperial calendar. More questions?
So, people may know this, but E.C. Tubbs' Doomerest series,
Yes.
obviously there's a lot of influence from that.
Absolutely.
I just read the first 6 of those in
I
preparation for this.
just picked up the whole series. I'm like about 17 right now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's amazing. But how soon, did you read those and say, I want to do a system, I want to make a space game because I read these? Or what was the catalyst that made you decide to write Traveler? I only use Doomerest because the influence is so obvious.
So obvious, yes. Well, first of all, in that era of 1973, 74, so it started in 73, Game Designers Workshop did Drangnak Osten and Unentschieden, World War II on this huge scale. And I had done Triplanetary just for fun, but we needed some games that will do some sales and some cash flow while we did the other. And so we did Triplanetary, and it sold reasonably well. Then we did some other games and such. But I was always the science fiction guy. I liked science fiction, and so we decided, let's do some science fiction games. And we did, what do we do? Double Star,
Yeah, Double Star. Was
Blood
Belter
Tree
pre or
Rebellion.
post?
What?
Was Belter pre or post Traveler?
Pre.
Pre, yeah.
So we had a line of box games: Blood Tree Rebellion, Triplanetary, Double Star, Belter.
Belter, yeah.
We had some others we wanted to do, we never did them. We did Imperium then. In 1977, came out at the same time the Traveler came out as. And those were, we wanted to do science fiction. Well, as we were doing those, we played D&D. We liked D&D. Everybody, at one point, my partner Frank Chadwick said, you can't play Dungeons and Dragons while the sun's up. Because there was no work getting done. Everybody was playing D&D either together or with somebody else during the day, and nothing got done. So he had to make that ruling, and that was fine. But I said, boy, there's no science fiction out there. There was, Metamorphosis Alpha, which disappointed me because it was science fantasy. It was basically D&D in space. And so, let's see, there was Starfaring, which was a very 8.5 by 11,
Was Aftermath in that period, or is that a little bit
after, later. So I said, I want to do a science fiction game, and they said, go ahead. You know, that's how formal we were. And I set about, literally, I took the D&D set, here's the first book, okay, how do I do characters in combat? And I did character generation and space and personal combat. And then I did a system of doing starships. You know, Doomerest doesn't tell you how starships work.
No.
You just go from place to place. And we soon found that players wanted more than Doomerest. You know, there's not enough there because there's some people who were fine to be Doomerest as an adventurer, but others wanted to build their own spaceships. And so it needed a spaceship creation system, and we made one. It needed worlds. So, you know, Doc Smith and Lensman, you know, they have a variety of starships, from little corvettes to maulers, they call them, one step higher than a battleship. And the biggest ship in the bunch is the Z9M9Z, because there's these code letters that say this is how big it is and this is how powerful it is. And so all those letters mean something. I said, I want that. You know, it didn't work for High Guard, but that's what I wanted. But they also had, you know, the same sort of classification system for people or for species or whatever. And so I was creating those things because I thought that'd be fun to get to be able to compare people, that sort of stuff. And that's where the universal personality profile came from. Shows how well I think things through. You know, we have a universal personality profile and a universal planetary profile. How does that? And the same. You know, eventually we changed that, but it shows how much detail we went into, not paying much attention.
Can you retell that piece you told me on Thursday about the IBM typewriters with the member units you were using to write? I had never known that these things existed, and then it explains so much about the layout and editing of those first 3 books.
Thank you. So when we first started, we literally would write out our rules on longhand on yellow legal pads, give it to somebody who worked at a typesetter and had spare time. And they would typeset things while in the spare time, give them back these galleys, and we would paste them up. You know, it's this very 70s technology. We soon moved to IBM Selectric cold typesetters. And you had to type everything twice. You literally would type it, and then, I can't even remember how we did it. And then it would tell you green or yellow or blue, and you'd set the thing, and then you would type it again, exactly the same way.
Blindly, you had no screen.
No, and it was a like little golf ball typewriter, and then it would it out, and then you do the next line, and it would justify the type. Very soon after that, they came out with the IBM Magnetic Card Selectric Electronic Composer, which had a box the size of that chair over here, into which you would push a magnetic coded IBM card. It would memorize all the keystrokes for a page that you typed. And every page in the Classic Traveler book was one of those cards. And it would, you put it in and tell it to print, and it would spit it out. And if there was a typographical error, you would let it spit it out until you pushed stop. You found it, and you'd backspace over the error and fix it until you finally had it right. And then you would tell it, print, and it printed out as a page. A black type on white paper.
Right, but you were telling me that in order to change font or size,
Oh, yeah.
you had to, you would print, you would stop, you had to take the ball off, put another ball on, get the right ball.
Get the right ball.
Let it go again, it would hit another stop point, you had to pull that ball off, Whenever.
And if you changed leading, you had to click, click, click up 3 clicks instead of 4 on the plate. And then do it, and then click back the same number of clicks.
Which explains why all the typesetting in Traveler 1 is basically the same.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It took a personal investment to make something italic.
Yeah, because I was asking about the editing process,
Yeah.
and then you like explained that, and I went, oh, I can understand why there was only so many passes you could do.
And you would write the final, it was not some, you scribble some notes, and then you sit there and you write what you want to write.
Explains why the books are short, too.
So, can you tell us a little bit more about 1902?
Oh, yeah.
Well, you know.
Okay, so I have made some commitments to the Traveler universe. One is, it is not my job to just disregard canon,
Right.
even if I don't agree with it. And so I wrote Classic Traveler. I wrote most of Mega Traveler. I was not in a position to control things when New Era was written, and there was some effort to make it more chaotic and introduce some things that, the virus and the wave. And then I came back in control when we did Traveler 4, and then Traveler 5 is my attempt to retrofit all of Traveler 1 with the advances of Traveler 4 and go to a roll under instead of a roll over system, all that sort of stuff. And so I accept things like the wave. I'm not sure what the wave is. So I have to it wasn't terribly defined, it was implied, but so I accept that that's happening. And I make it work. And so in the Traveler novel, for example, somebody goes across 800 parsecs to somewhere where they meet, they see where the wave happened. So we know it's coming. Think of it as global warming. Nobody wants to address it, but it's coming. And we have the chaos of Mega Traveler and the Rebellion, and then the decline of everything that happens after that to the New Era. And so I'm working with people to do 1902 on the Imperial calendar, 800 years after the Golden Age. The wave has cascaded through charted space, and it basically has destroyed civilization. And it's destroyed the idea of having massive empires, that those are no longer viable. And so the Aslan area is no longer one massive empire. The Zhodani are no longer one massive empire. Many of these worlds have been thrown back to the Stone Age, and some worlds have survived. And this is 1902 is the Republic of Regina, the Regina and area of the Spinward Marches, which has survived relatively untouched. And now at an advanced tech level, we're talking about 15, 16, 17, all that interesting stuff, facing the new threats that we see in the universe. But most of the people in the Republic in 1902 could give a care about what's going on off planet. They have no idea what's out there, and they don't care. There's no money to be made. There's no reason to go out there and do that. And this is some group of people who are finding clues to more threats to the universe that they have to address. Because charted space is a rather big space, but it's about 1,000th of the territory of the galaxy. And there are a lot bigger areas out there with a lot more powerful organizations than we know. And that's what 1902 is supposed to address. And so everybody at home is very happy to just be at home on Regina or its neighboring worlds and live their lives of happy ignorance while there are forces at work that are going to destroy the galaxy if we can't stop them. I think that'd be fun.
I don't remember the wave from the New Era. I remember the virus.
The Empress Wave. And the Empress Wave is coming. It's this. There are reports of it, and it basically people are hearing. They see it's a psionic kind of a wave that is crashing across forward of the Imperium at the moment. It'll get here one of these days. It'll get here in 1200.
Yeah, you gotta go look at Star Wars that number, because they call that thing the Scream.
Yeah, okay, well, there it is, yeah.
No, I was wondering where that came from. It obviously wasn't him, so.
No, it's the screen. And it was not well defined, and so I had to define it. And I define it as something that is about a month long and challenges individuals' sanity. And so if you have most of the people have an insane crisis, civilization is going to collapse.
So is it all people or just psionic people that are getting crushed by this thing?
Okay, so here's the rule that I use. You have a saving throw against your psionic potential. And everybody has a psionic potential, whether they know it or not.
So there's it's the unsaid characteristic that you have.
Yes. And that is 2D plus 3 at age 0 minus your age in terms. Old people have very low psionic potential. Babies have a very high psionic potential. You're basically destroying the current generation when it sweeps through, because it will, make them insane. And they're much more likely to be insane because they have a very high number they have to save against.
So everyone has a psionic potential.
Yeah,
Okay.
except not. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just picturing in my mind that we have Regina, which and its little neighborhood of states, and they're all kind and happy. And I'm remembering my Spinward Marches map, and the Zhodani Consulate is not very far away from Regina, and this is going to be terrible for them. This is going to be Fury Road, complete with the doof on a.
This is Secrets of the Universe, and I'm, subject to change, but this is the working stuff that I'm working with. First of all, some people have no psionic potential. It's rare, but some people have no psionic potential. And we've come to the conclusion that they're very powerful because they're literally immune to psionics. A psion cannot read them. He cannot control them. He can't cure them. He can't do any of those things. They are just, it's like they're blind, or everybody else is blind to them. They literally, a psion can't tell he's in the room except that his eyes tell him he's there.
So you literally couldn't lift him with telekinesis.
Right. They're immune to them, which is strange. Can I lift his pants? Okay, you can do that, but you can't lift him,
The rock over his head.
Yeah. And so I've come to the conclusion that a psi null, is very powerful within the Zhodani Imperium, and the Zhodani Consulate as well, because they can't be read, they can't let secrets out, they know things and nobody can ever tell them unless, or read them unless they tell you. It's a very powerful person, because the problem with psionics is you never know who is making you think what you think. And with a null, they can't. Yeah.
Hunting down rogue sides and things like
Right.
that.
Except they have no power. They can just tell people what to do, and people do that because they obey orders. So that's psionics. Now, where were we? You asked a different question.
That the Zhodani Consulate is, and that chaos of the Zhodani Consulate is like, a stone's throw away from
Right.
Regina.
So here's another thing. I talked about Canon. you know, and I get to take all this information and try and process it together. But one of them is the Zhodani have been running core expeditions since who knows when, you know. They've gotten halfway to the core. So they must know about the wave. Because, yeah,
How would they not?
how would they not? They have to have gone by there. They have to have encountered
the
it.
wave.
They keep driving through the wave, you know, so they know it. And the Zhodani, when they discovered it, right at the beginning, after, you know, there was one expedition which just missed it, went to just short of it and came back. The next one, as they went out, discovered it, and the leadership panicked and did not reveal that answer, has suppressed that answer ever since. And so the leadership knows that in 1200, Imperial year 1200, the wave will touch the edge of the Zhodani Consulate. They're literally, during the New Era stuff, it's already in parts of the Zhodani Consulate. But they don't reveal it ahead of time because it would cause chaos.
Mass hysteria.
Mass hysteria. It would, and so they don't do that. And, it's like, I call it global warming, you know. But what would you do? What could you do? You want to tell people in 500 years the world is going to end? You want to tell people in Miami that in 100 years your beachfront property doesn't work? We kind of tell them that, but nobody's paying attention.
So is that kind of is that now the retcon reason why the Zhodani were being so aggressive on their borders, trying to expand out? Or is that, I mean, I know that wasn't the original, you know, lore, but now you have this. And
Do you know that the Zhodani and their consulate, they've had their territory for, 5,000 years.
Mhm.
They were contemporaries of the Volani Empire. They were happy with their borders.
Right.
And if you look at the traveler map, if you look at the maps and the things, Jump 1 and Jump 2 it easily gets you to most of the places in the Imperium, but not to the Spinward Marches. It's hard to get to the Spinward Marches if you have Jump 1. Jump 2, okay, but it's not easy. And so there was never any reason for the Imperium and the Zhodani to interact. And then all of a sudden, you had the Third Imperium and these people, these happy, chaotic Imperials just come out and settle in the Spinward Marches right next to the Zhodani, and bump them out and just do all kinds. And they're a massive threat. And the Zhodani have wanted to get rid of that threat. It threatens their territory. It threatens their way of life. They want to be rid of it. And their idea is, we want to wipe out these guys. We'll do whatever we can. And they keep doing the frontier wars. They keep doing stuff to try and get rid of those Imperials. And they never seem to be able to.
So is this all stuff that's going to be part of the reprint of T5?
It is not part of the reprint of T5. It's I call it the Republic of Regina, and we will make that as a setting. Now, okay, so I have another part of this that I think is fun, and we have a massive, rich. I'll step back because there's so many things to talk about. But one of the things I talk about with people is the rich decision-making environment, RDME. I think that's what makes things fun in role-playing. It's not just you go, here are 3 doors, pick one, they all lead to the same place, That a lot of ventures used to be that. And I think that instead, there are many ways to achieve what you want to achieve. And so, let's see now, gather my thoughts again. The Golden Age is a great place to play. I don't want to abandon it. It's filled with many things that are fun to do. And so I envision the Republic of Regina, this time where people live lives of happy plenty I mean, why, you know, they have jobs. And my idea is this, is that you're going to generate a citizen character. Maybe he sells, you know, life support for starships. Maybe he sells turrets to the Navy. Maybe he sells, maybe he's, you know, just a shoe salesman, a professor, any one of these citizen careers. And you have a bunch of your friends, and they have their careers, but you get together. There are many things that you can do. You can be a member of the 4518th reenactors. And you got, you know, you actually have a battle dress, a working battle dress, you know, and you go out with the guys on weekends once a month and do things. Or you could be a member of the 154th Battle Rider Squadron, and you don't own starships, but you have a reenactor network, and you do virtual space battles against Zhodani.
With 1/25th scale.
Oh no, it's you know, virtual.
Oh, virtual.
You know,
Yeah.
you know, and some people are Zhodani Squadron reenactors because everybody's friends. You know, they're Zhodani citizens, people of Zhodani extraction. You know, and you do that stuff. Now you can play all of these adventures from Classic Traveler as adventures. You're a guy and you have a character. So you may be a shoe salesman, but you've got a Marine captain character who's your guy. And that's what's fun, see? But gradually you're going to learn. This is the story of Republic of Regina. Your uncle dies, one of your guys' uncles dies, and he's got an Xbox that he leaves you. He was a professor. He's got an Xbox with a chip with all these adventures on it. And it turns out they're the originals of the original experiences which don't mesh with history. Because they really are telling you the truth of why that thing happened. And these threats that have been behind the scenes. And these missions that have gone beyond our borders and met with the threats out there. And you're gradually learning about the threats to your modern way of life. And as you play these adventures, you will find that as a captain in Marines, although you're just a shoe salesman, as a captain of Marines, you are gradually learning to be a commander of troops and a good shot and all that sort of stuff. And if you're a reenactor pilot in the squadron, you're gradually learning to be a good pilot because the time's going to come when you need to use those skills in real life. But you get to play anything you want, all those adventuring stories. And of course, the other benefit is you don't die if your guy dies.
Well, not until
Well,
it's
you
go
said-
time.
So you get to roll up a new virtual character like you do now.
Yeah, or no, there's just the pause. A reset to the last save point.
Oh, well, that's...
There's gonna be. It sounds like there's gonna be like book 2 of this adventure where it's like, okay, so now the threats are here. We're playing with the really real.
You know,
stuff.
Traveler 5, Classic Traveler is kind of capped at Tech 15, and we barely know what Tech 15 is.
Yeah.
And there are some really fun things at the highest levels of higher levels of tech that are interesting. You know, philosophical choices. I have one of them. It's called happiness. You know, there's a tech level where we can make you happy, and you have
Biochemically or...
we can make you happy. There's no, you're going to be happy. You have no motivation to do anything else at all because you're happy.
Put that in Ring World.
Lay down.
They did. Yeah.
You just walk around and zap people with a wand.
Ah.
Are you borrowing back from Joss Whedon now?
What? Yeah, yeah.
Reverb.
And by the way,
Turnabout's fair play.
I want to go to Comic-Con one day with somebody else with a phone running while I go up and talk to him and say, "Hi, I'm Marc Miller with Traveler, and I just want to talk to you about your Traveler campaign."
I was a traveler.
Oh, yeah. You can tell. Hey, no, while the phone's running, you can tell me.
Between the two of us.
I'll be in my bunk.
Oh, man. Maura, you got a question.
Yeah, I did have a question about the wave and the psionic. I'm just curious how you picture it. Do you picture it like a photon that's almost weightless that can travel through solid objects and deep under the sea and things like that? Or is it really just like could those standing structures actually block it for RP's sake?
Okay, now, everything's subject to change, but this is how I envision it. That there is somebody at the core of the galaxy, or something, or some group, or something, some reason why they sent this thing here, and it's meant. There's the Scream also exists in Niven's known space.
Okay, so maybe that's where you got the name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where they just killed everything in the galaxy. All intelligent life in the galaxy is killed by the Scream when they set it off. When those people, were defeated in their war to end the war, they just killed everything, and the galaxy restarted in terms of intelligent life. New intelligent life started from that. I think that the wave is that sort of a purge of this area to get rid of
Empires.
yeah, threats to them. Whether they're the ancients or the rivals of the ancients or whatever, that's what the wave is for.
I know we're Babylon 5 territory.
So the Traveler, my novel, The Agent, has a situation where, first of all, there is no connection between jump space and real world, real space. I mean, that's doctrine. There isn't. And we have somebody looking, and jump space drives you crazy if you look at it. Except it doesn't. Not for everybody, see? So for some people it's soothing. Some people can tolerate it. And, we have somebody watching jump space while they happen in jump space, while watching out this de-opaqued window, and jump space turns blue or pink, I don't remember which. And literally the scene is she's watching this and sees it happen, calls for the captain comes down there, she says, "Look at this," and they're literally timing it, and they calculate it's about 30 days long, in terms of real space distance. They're at a week, it covers a parsec, or 4 parsecs or whatever. And they calculate that there is this time where the space turns a different color, and that's the wave. There's something there. In jump space. And he says, there's no connection between jump space and real space. And she says, but look, there it is, And this wave is psionic in nature and challenges the sanity of everybody everywhere. There is no protection. There is some indication there is a nutraceutical protection, that if you have the right diet or the right nutrients, you will be impervious to it. If you're a null, it doesn't affect you. We're not sure if it affects people in cold sleep. But that's what that is, and it happens Okay, so we know what the ancient war is, Grandfather and his children fought, and it destroyed his civilization, which covers most of where known space is, charted space is. There is an intelligence which lives in gas giant upper atmospheres. And they communicate with what I call voice, except it's P, because it's perception, the perception sense that Traveler 5 defines that humans don't have. And humans are immune to it, they can't sense it. But the ancients do, the droid do. And it bothers them and bothered grandfather, and so he decided to wipe out all those guys. And so there is this war between them and the ancients, and that's what the war really was. Very deep stuff, well, you know, it'll unfold over long periods of time, but there's fun stuff to be done. And there are reasons why all this goes on. And I have to be careful not to just say, oh, I'll just make this problem happen. I'm forced to accept the wave as existing, and I'm trying to find some reason why it existed. And there are many hypotheses, but I'm trying to make something that makes sense. You know, one of the things I don't like is when you have an ancient prophecy that says that these guys are going to do this sort of thing. Who made up the prophecy? Why did he do that? Where did that come from? How did they know what was going to happen 800 years later? I'm trying to not do that. I'm trying to have reasons for things to happen that meshes and is consistent with all that other stuff.
I have two questions about the nature of the wave.
Okay?
First one is it targeted specifically out, or is it radiating out in a circle from the center?
It is it is not multi-directional. It is targeted. It covers, you know, maybe 1,000 parsecs wide. Traveler Map has an option to show you where it is at any date.
And then second question, is it a continuous beam, or is there blank behind it? So you said it lasted for about a month?
Right.
So
It's a wave that is a month thick,
Okay.
and it hits and it rises to its maximum intensity and then comes down. In that time, everybody is doing their saving throw every day for 30 days. So can you know, if your psionic potential is 2, you might not be touched. And you know, so then I also I'm trying. I've learned to try and define things in terms of actual effects in the game, rather than it drives you insane. It's what does that insanity do? Well, it makes your mental and educational factors random. It re-rolls your number for that day if you fail it.
And it just, if you keep failing, it just keeps re-rolling?
It keeps re-rolling it. And then when it's all over, you come back to what you were. If you're not, but we also have a sanity, you know, I stole it from Cthulhu, I confess, you know, because we have a sanity thing. And sanity, and you may end up permanently insane. And my calculations are that half the people die, and half of those remaining are insane. If the world has 2,000 people on it, and it's dependent on technological means to provide environment, probably not a viable world anymore.
Or if you're dependent on trade, like you don't have agriculture because you're in an airless world and you're relying on food coming in, and suddenly that trade dries up.
Yep, it just,
You can only stay alive as long as you
Right.
keep your meat fresh.
yeah.
Or your protein printer fails.
Yeah, you know, you got makers, that's fine, but if there's no raw maker stuff coming in, then you're stuck.
Yeah. So, you know, when you wrote it in 1977, there was a certain level of tech in our world, and we had conceptual pieces. There was a speculative stuff in science fiction, obviously, and then now we've had this explosion of new science fiction in films, books, and then just what we're doing in society today. Like, just, you know, our concepts of computers have changed drastically. You know,
Yeah, I didn't think of networks when we were doing it before. I thought there was one massive computer on the ship that everybody plugged into, you know?
I mean, I was going back to the classic Trevor rules, and I remember finding the drone rules, drones are so much more sophisticated in our universe than they are in Traveler.
So, first of all, I think that we will never again see, not just in our lifetime, but ever, the kind of technological change that the 20th century showed us. You know, we went from not radio to radio. We went from not space travel to space travel, not cars to cars, not airplanes to airplanes, all that stuff. And we're not going to see anything like that. I don't mean to say we won't have inventions, but it's not helicopters for everybody. And it's not going to be revolutionary stuff. Airplanes are revolutionary. We're going to see evolutionary changes, and we're not going to see much of that. You know, air travel is not going to change much from the airplanes we know today. You know,
They may change the fuel efficiency, they might.
but they're
change-
not going to be supersonic or hypersonic. Those things just are not practical.
Right.
Lift still works the way lift works.
Yeah.
Let's figure out anti-gravity.
Yeah, if we can do that, and we make
would
some
be it.
things, we say anti-gravity, we're gonna have that, that's a real change.
That is a-
Lifters, you know, and we put it just out of range of when I'm dead, and so I don't have to worry about it.
iPads
That's
are
how you
never
get
gonna-
Harkonnens.
iPads are never gonna be lighter.
Well, realistically-
No, they aren't, and you can't, there's a certain minimum lightness they have to be.
Exactly.
I think your next big one will be cold fusion.
Yeah.
If you get that, then you can make some jumps that you can't.
And you know, and that was why we picked cold fusion, because I didn't want to have to worry about gas stations on other worlds, you know? What are we gonna do? How do we do that? You have to have something. We have the alternate, we have the fusion power plants, we have fission power plants in Traveler 5. We have the fantasy collector canopy, which harvests exotic particles. And we have antimatter, and I was looking at that, and boy, how do you make antimatter work? Because one hit on the antimatter gun, boom, and it blows up with more energy than anything, and that ship's gone. So, you know, there's not much that's practical beyond the fusion system. So, on the other hand, Traveler 5 looks at a lot of really interesting things. Trying to do, I mean, there are some things that would be interesting to do, and it talks about them, and maybe you'll encounter them at the very high-tech levels. You know, the goos, the gray goo thing, the idea of editing personalities. What?
The body swapping.
The body swapping, the multiple personalities, the multiple lives, happiness, planet buster bombs, you know, massive things that Doc Smith came up with. But, okay, so in '77, as far as I could figure, Trek 15 was as far as I could figure out what to do. And that's pretty strong. But it also made me think, if Tech 15, I have trouble knowing what's beyond Tech 15, what's Tech 100? What's Tech 1,000? But not just magic, but magic, you know.
Yeah.
And so I came up with, there are some books that talk about the singularity. There's a point when we're beyond tech that I just picked an arbitrary tech level Z. It's interesting because we have tech level Z is the maximum highest tech level you can have. And then under the tech level system, you can have higher than that. You have experimental things at tech level Z that represent tech level not 33, but 36 or 37. But you'll never get beyond that because you can't get beyond Z. So they're just hints of things to do. But there's a cap. Beyond that, I call it a higher plane. It's like, I saw this thing the other day and it talked about, think about calling up demons. You know, pentagram, you call up. And you, if you know the demon's name, you can call him. And then it said, think about the ants, you know, and they want to call you up. You know, and if they just down there, but if they know your name, if they could somehow make your name and call it up, you would pay attention to them.
Spell it out with wood chips or something.
Yeah, and, oh, look,
Yes.
Mark. And all of a sudden, you know, and then they start communicating with you however they do. And what would you do with them, you know? And how, because we don't pay a lot of attention to ants, and you'd at least pay attention to them, you know, but and it said, you know, so like, this ant wants that ant to love him. You know?
Push them together a little bit, there you go.
Or kill all the other ants.
I mean, there are two schools of thought.
You have to live with the rats now.
But those are just beyond our ken, our ability to think. So I've talked about in character generation, you know, dead characters playing in space heaven and exploring space heaven, you know, which is another place. And it's fun because I have not concluded what space heaven is. I don't know what it is. All I know is how I've described it, which is this. What?
Would it just be on Earth? Sort of the opposite, wouldn't it just be sort of on Earth? So
Oh.
Heaven for us is up, and for them.
Oh, no. Space heaven is there is the Volani legend of the Dakaseri, which is the audience of stars. Everybody who's never yet been born and everybody who's already died, all those stars are souls watching us. And the legends of the Volani people are of them talking about trying to change what's happening down here and always frustrated because it never happens.
So like Minbari,
Yeah,
from Babylon 5.
yeah, yeah. So if you're dead, you're up there. You can see what's happening down here, but you can't influence it. Except I wonder if you can, you know? Because it also talks about the people up there, the unborn souls, learning at the feet of their deceased ancestors how to live a good life. And that carries through as they are then born. But it's mostly people in rows of chairs watching what's going on and unable to influence it. And I wonder if there are ways to change that. So it'd be fun. We'll see what that does.
Now, you were telling us at the character generation tables that that's the idea. You generate characters, one of them dies, you then go play in space heaven.
Right. Generate a dead character and play in space heaven.
I need that.
Right?
I need that because I killed 75% of my characters.
Yeah, well, that's, you know, but you know, there are logical issues. If you can see, if everybody who's ever born and everybody who's ever died is there, that includes non-humans. So there are other levels of the audience of non-human aliens watching, including strange aliens that live at zero temperature or in the coronas of stars and
Those gas giant.
the gas giant people. Can you talk to them? You know, is there some common language by which you can interact? Can you go from the audience that looks down on Earth to the audience that looks down on Alpha Centauri? How long does that take? Is it faster than light? What, you know, so that's the challenge that I'm facing, and I'm just enjoying playing with that.
Stadium that's grandfather put us here. And they're all just kind of irritated with the drawing in general.
Yeah. So if you haven't, and some of you haven't, so you have to read the novel because it talks about that, and it'll give you a different take now that you think that you want to put characters in it to play it.
I like you brought up the novel. One of the things I like about the novel, The Imperium, and I think it's from the novel. I don't think it's from like the supplements that I've been reading since high school. But the concept that the Imperium, when it was just starting out, when it was just being, and it was going to world, it had this little fusion power plant that it would just hand to, here's
Here's the story.
and it'll work so long. Yeah,
Right. Because the reason the Imperium is so powerful is because the guy who started the Imperium invented suitcase-sized cold fusion. And that's a paradigm shift. Nobody had it before. That literally the space fighters that Terra used to fight against the Volani were 100-ton fighters, because you can't build a smaller ship with that, they don't have that small power plant. So the Imperium has this cold fusion. So then, as they start out, they will give somebody, here, you apply, we'll vet you, you'll invest a certain amount of money, we're gonna give you a ship, you're gonna have a ship and a hold full of cold fusion. And each of them has secret codes, so that they can't just be stolen. And you go out to one of these worlds and you have a maker that'll make them, make more. And you get to be top dog in that society, and rich and important and powerful, because you've just brought free energy to this world. And
so the Milani that shows up basically economically dominates that world.
right,
Okay.
right. And when the Imperium finally reaches you, you or your parents or grandparents, generations before, have signed papers that say you are loyalty to the Imperium. Because, of course, they've got the override codes for those things. They could just push a button and blow them all up if you don't.
Or just shut them off.
Yeah. Yeah, or just shut them off. We'll start out with that, and if you still don't do it, we will. So the other thing I love is the override codes.
Enjoy going back to fossil fuels.
Oh, jeez, how would you do that,
Start building fires and work your way up from there.
So, I was thinking about that. I read some article about EMPs, and you could just destroy American civilization with an EMP, And then I thought, it was a couple weeks ago, we came home and the furnace light had gone out. And so the house temperature went down to 42 degrees. It was really cold out. And it took a full day for that natural gas furnace to get us back up to 70, 68. We have a fireplace. Now, a lot of houses in our town do not have fireplaces, but we have a fireplace. And so we could put a fire in the fireplace and stay warm in the living room only until, of course, we ran out of wood. How long does that work? I mean, the natural gas supply is not going to keep coming. How long can civilization survive? How many winters can you survive? Can you survive the first winter after an EMP? I don't know that you can.
Well, you just do what my mom used to do when she lived in the Midwest before all that crap. You had the stove in that one room. In the wintertime, you just put blankets across the entrances and the windows, and you lived in the living room. That's why you got cabin fever. You couldn't get away from everybody.
Yeah.
And then,
assuming your natural gas keeps coming.
your wood supply was still.
I assume your wood supply.
Coal.
We're going to lose. We're going to lose the garage because I'm going to take it, dismantle it, and burn it.
We don't have to worry about cabin fever because we got RPGs now.
Today I'm a dwarf.
Oh, really?
Oh, I thought you had RPG.
Yes.
I'm thinking of the rocket launcher.
No, I think it says.
You guys are in the wrong room.
This is
But
science fiction.
civilization is pretty fragile,
Yeah.
and as we see in Venezuela, or Iraq, or Yemen, or Uganda,
Somalia.
and it's pretty fragile here in America unless we keep it nurtured. So I appreciate talking to you all. You're a very flattering audience, and I appreciate hearing your wonderful, kind words to me. But Traveler is this wonderful thing that we get to do and play, part of our lives. I want to say that not just Traveler, but role-playing, this convention, this hobby, it's got to be the best hobby in the world. It's good, clean-cut fun. There are some aberrant people who do things wrong or are jerks, but they're always that. But I'm pleased with things that I see in the hobby because we respond. I mean, there are rules. Be nice to other people. Wow. It's a shame you have to post that rule, but I think that being nice to other people is a fundamental part of this hobby, and we all have a good time doing it. And you talk about back in the 70s when I started, we were just having fun. And nobody thought that somewhere along the line we would share it with our children and our grandchildren, that they would love it for its own benefits and turn it to their own uses.
I'm so envious of my brother's kids because they just swim in the. I was on the cusp of the computer generation. You know, I just missed punch cards, and I had to program my own stuff when I first learned computers, and so I was in that cohort that either got it or said screw it.
Yeah.
And and then everybody that came after me
Got it.
Well, they didn't have a choice.
Mhm.
They just progress along. Like I watch my nieces and nephews, they're on cell phones now, and it's just like.
And they know all this stuff, and they just adopt it. They find out about the stuff. They have a good time. Yeah.
I'm telling my kid
Nerds are
about.
cool now, they get that.
I love telling my kid that I used to program and record onto an audio cassette.
Oh God, my Trash 80 with the
Yeah,
audio
Trash 80 Model 3, man.
And then get the number lined up on the little recorder to figure out where your program's
Oh.
at. Oh yeah,
20 minutes
the
to
analog
save,
counter,
20 minutes to
going
Yeah,
down.
and it clicks,
Yeah.
it clicks.
And if you took it to another one, if that counter wasn't like kind of in the same
Uh-huh.
way, you may not get to the right
No, you don't
start
get to the
point.
right place. And
Oh, nightmare. But it was a blast because you program in the Star Trek simulator and, in BASIC.
You know-
Play it once and then it wouldn't work again.
Exactly.
So I had an Apple II
The jump
Plus.
Fancy.
I had an Apple II Plus, and then we got audited by the IRS. And this guy, he says, so you play games on that thing? Yeah. Ha! I got you. You can't deduct it. I'm a game company. Okay, you can have it.
Damn it.
Now they don't even ask. They just,
Right.
oh, come on. It's essential to what you're doing.
What percentage of it do you use for business? That's what they ask.
Yeah.
Like, the great thing is I've been kind of introducing tabletop to those kids because they're always in the devices, and the games that you can do just on this thing are crazy.
Mhm. And yet there is something about sitting across the table
My
that,
nephew adores Dungeon. He just loves kicking down a door, killing a monster, and taking its treasure.
Yeah.
And I mean, literally, I'm still trying to get him onto other games because literally when he comes over, let's play
Yeah.
Dungeon.
yeah, well, but that it gets him started. He'll,
I've
Yeah.
tried. He question just doesn't click for him.
Yeah.
I'm just saying,
It's
not,
really an
not everybody thinks the same way. That there is some Pavlovian response to that game.
but that's let 1,000 flowers bloom because he
Right.
likes that, somebody else likes that, somebody else likes My Little Pony. Oh, everybody can do all this
I don't
stuff.
care what the game is. If they love games, I know that I'm going to have something to do with them for the rest of my life.
And I think there was a time when somebody would have said that these board games are just passé. They're never going to survive in the face of computers. And here we are. We're all playing face to face. We aren't playing on computers with each other. And
Well, yes and no, but yeah.
well, okay, so people are running the game from an iPad and a notebook.
Well, I'll say this: the adjunct of streaming services, right? Or in the case of role-playing games, Roll20, Fantasy Grounds, that kind of stuff, where I can connect up with friends that I can't physically be with,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's not perfect, but there's and just like had there been Twitch in my day, and I could watch Marc Miller or somebody who actually knew how to use the Classic Traveler system, I would have grokked what you were doing so much quicker. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no question about that.
Well, but, so I'm going to tell you this other story that when I first got into gaming, now, when I first got into gaming, I tried to play D-Day with my friend when we
Right.
were in high school. We tried
This
it,
is the
and,
Avalon Hill.
yeah.
Is that the one with the monster book?
No, that's Squad Leader.
And that's a different story because I actually talked to the designer of Squad Leader when he was first designing it and played in the first game, one of the first games he did.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But when I tried D-Day, we couldn't understand it.
Yeah.
And so then, 10 years later, a little less than that, I went to the games club at Illinois State University. And before we started Game Designers Workshop, it was my first experience. I didn't know how to play. And they had this great thing. They just said, you want to learn how to play? We'll teach you. You pick the game. We'll assign somebody to you. You'll meet with him privately, and he'll show you how to play. And so I picked France 1940, and this geography professor, Dr. Maudry, I met with him in his office. We set it up. He showed me what the counters meant. He showed me how movement went. We went through the rules, and he explained everything as a mentor. We played one turn.
And then you got it.
And I knew what I was doing, you know? We were designing games within a week because we could make our own counters and we could do stuff. And everybody wanted to do that. But that's what you need, is somebody to impart that knowledge to you. And I am forever grateful to him.
Does that now.
What?
YouTube does that now.
Yeah, now you got YouTube and you're right.
But you can't interact with it.
No, but at least there's somebody who's worked it out.
It's much better.
You know, but there was just no resource at all. And I just met with this guy.
Yeah, it was hit or
You taught
miss.
me.
You either found a group, like you
Yeah.
know, like in my town, I didn't know Western Oregon Wargamers was a thing when I was a kid.
Mhm.
And then I discovered when I went in, and they had their, but I've been playing D&D and Traveler and all these things, and in my own way, we just kind of figured it out or made shit up if we didn't understand.
But you know, it's interesting. There's a kind of divide, and we find that in geometry. I love geometry because classical geometry, and there's this thing called the Pons Asinorum, and it's one of the original elementary proofs in geometry. And it says, and I don't even remember what it is, but it's basically if you say, here's this theorem, prove it. And some people can figure it out that if this angle and this angle, it gets this angle, and you have this proof. And some people can't. They just say, I don't get it. Yeah. And they don't get geometry. And there's this divide. There's this divide of people who get games and people who don't. You know, people who understand. Of course, you know, there's all kinds of American society that I don't get, and I'm proud that I don't. So.
I think people who don't get games just haven't tried the right way.
And that's part of it. That's part of it.
Well, yeah, and it's also a delivery system. You know, I mean, granted, it's so much easier now just to go watch a play it now video or watch a live stream of someone playing the game. There's so much, but it doesn't teach you everything.
No, you still have to. You get to add your own stuff to it,
Right.
and that's wonderful too. We're drawing to a close. I want to thank you all for coming.
Yeah, that's right.
Gonna have to vacate and let you've successfully. This is a pass-fail course, so you've successfully passed
Awesome.
Traveler 201, and I come back to this has got to be the best hobby in the world. Not just Traveler, but role-playing, board games, miniatures, and it's good, clean fun. It satisfies something we all have that we want to satisfy.
Can you do 301 next year?
I will. I wonder what I'll have to cover on that.
Gonna have to do math. Gonna have to do calculations, mass, and acceleration.
I'm going to teach everybody vectors.
There you go.
I'll have to bring my wife and physics major.
And my wife is a physics teacher. We're gonna set up a game of brilliant lances, and
Oh,
You know, there are some things that just aren't worth doing. Like three-dimensional space is not worth doing.
Yeah.
That we don't need to know that in order to have a good time.